Okay, thank you. Good morning, everybody.
Morning, Brian. Good morning.
Okay, I'm on the phone.
Hey, Joanne.
Sorry.
No, I'm sorry, somebody needs to check their sound.
I run the meeting if you.
You are breaking up when you're talking, though.
Oh, well, that's not going to be good. All right. Is Jeff willing to run the meeting?
If need be, yes.
Breaking up as well. Power for a while. It's out all over the orchards.
Of course.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah, Jeff said he would be willing to run the meeting if you can't.
Oh, good. I wasn't sure where that.
One thing I noticed in yesterday's meeting is that when you're a participant online, other people can just completely cut off. Like, if it seems like two people are talking, it'll just shut other people out and the louder voice takes over. You don't hear at all some of it. Like Wes would be saying stuff, for example, but the person online is completely the only sound.
Right.
It's kind of an interesting perspective.
Yeah.
That I didn't realize. Listen and not interrupting.
Okay, Joanne, Jeff says he has to restart his computer, so he'll be just a minute.
Okay.
So we'll give us another minute or two, let him join before we start the committee meeting. And if you're good with that.
I'm completely good with that. I was going to go to the Lloyd office.
I'm sorry, you broke up again.
Good.
Oh, and there's Dean. Hey, Dean.
Yeah, I'm here. For some reason I had this at 1 o'clock today, and then I realized it was at 9. So
We are just waiting a minute or two for another, actually for Jeff to join. He had to restart his computer.
he must have rural Wi-Fi like I do. So
He had to do that, and Joanne's power went out, so few challenges this morning.
Well, that's all right. When's our bill coming up for the legislature?
Okay. So separate from 1128, JFAC just passed the IDWR budget that included the 30 million ongoing.
Oh, good.
Passed, what was it, 15-5, I think was the number.
Oh,
Yeah, I expected, I was told to expect a motion and a substitute motion, and it passed, seems like it passed relatively easily.
so that means 1128 doesn't or what does that put 1128?
Yeah, it means 1128 doesn't need to go through.
Okay.
Since the 30 million got put in the department's ongoing base budget.
Okay.
If the budget passes both houses.
Okay, I guess we'll figure that out. So,
Okay, Brian, this is Jeff. Little technical difficulty here on my end. I guess whatever bug was in JFAC transferred to Eastern Idaho for a minute. Is Joanne on?
Man,
Oh, okay. All right. What's your pleasure, Joanne? Do you want to chair this meeting or do you want me to?
my audio is in and out, and I think it might be better for everyone if somebody with more stable internet or cell service chaired the meeting.
Okay. All right. I will do that for the moment anyway, till we see if you get power back or not.
Okay.
Okay, we need to call to order here. I'll call to order Finance Committee meeting number 2-25, originating at the Water Center and being live streamed on YouTube with participants at various locations around the state. Let's see, are we going to do a silent attendance, Mr. Patton?
Mr. Chairman, all finance committee members are present, as well as Pat McMahon is also present.
Okay. All right. Let's move on to agenda item 2, flood management grant criteria. Who do we have for that?
We're gonna have Blake Burkhardt present on that topic, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Welcome, Blake.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Blake, and today I'll be discussing staff efforts to update the flood management grant criteria, and we'll finish with a request to the Finance Committee to recommend these changes to the criteria for the full board. So the flood management grant program was established in 2018 after direction from the legislator to award grants to projects that support flood management. I've been participating in the grading of applications since 2022 and have observed that some of the instructions that we provide to applicants are scattered between 3 different documents and potentially don't necessarily align with the criteria that we're scoring these applications on. So our goal here was to streamline the application process, align the criteria with the requirements, and make it clear to the applicants how the submission will be graded. And in doing so, we were able to consolidate 3 of the documents into one that we're referring to as the flood management grant criteria, the program criteria. So this slide just showed the current application requirements on the left and what we're proposing on the right. And I've attempted to highlight, this shows the old application requirements next to the current criteria. And I was attempting to highlight how they differ from each other. While looking at the criteria, we're scoring the applications based on urgency, but we are not asking for applicants to provide a description of their urgency. And while we're asking for project descriptions, maps, design documents, and descriptions of similar projects, we were assigning no scores to that information. Staff are proposing new application requirements, which are the column on the right next to the existing requirements. And most of this is just recategorizing the current requirements, but a few new things, including description of urgency and an analysis of alternatives that should demonstrate that the applicant has arrived at the best solution for their needs for this project. And here is the current criteria on the left next to what staff are proposing to be the new criteria on the right. We wanted to separate the points allocated to things that we thought should not be bundled, such as urgency and anticipated costs, budget and schedule. And we assigned points to the things that we added to the application requirements. Some other changes that we're proposing include texts that require in-kind work to be invoiced the same way that all other costs are invoiced, and added text that proposed project expenses prior to grant award date are not eligible for reimbursement, which is how the Aging Infrastructure Grant Program procedure operates. We're proposing changing the requirements for approval from flood control districts to only active flood control districts, since a lot of flood control districts are not considered active. And we wanted to remove the total program budget from the criteria document to allow the board to determine yearly budget, which will allow for a rollover from prior year's remainder if the budget is not fully allocated for that grant cycle. And the last thing that we wanted to propose for changes today is still needing some tweaking on the criteria document, but this came from a discussion with Finance Committee and board members that were concerned about funding transportation related aspects of projects. For this topic, I did some research by looking at last year's round of applications, and of the $702,303 allocated for flood management grants, $31,000 was allocated for aggregate surfacing, road mix fill, flood damage access road grading and finish, and gravel fill for a bridge approach. And that totaled 5% of the total money allocated for flood management grants. And an unknown amount was allocated for labor and equipment to install. It wasn't broken down to that level of detail in the applications, and no money was allocated for asphalt, road signs, guardrails, etc. And after some consideration, staff are recommending that we exclude funding for road appurtenances such as guardrails, road signs, as it can be hard to discern what labor, materials, and equipment costs are specifically attributed to the transportation aspects. So that is all I had for my presentation, and I'll stand for any questions before we move on to the recommendation. And of course, I wanted to look at this sentence here for the transportation aspects. Looks like I'm still sharing my presentation. Let's see. Let me share a different screen. Okay, so here is the what the proposed grant criteria, And the sentence highlighted in yellow is what we would add for the transportation related costs. And this reads, project costs related to the installation of road appurtenances, road signs, guardrails, etc., are not eligible for reimbursement. And if finance committee staff or finance committee are happy with that, then I would recommend these changes to the full board.
Okay, committee members, do you have any questions?
Mr. Chair, this is Joanne.
Go ahead.
And I do have a question. What am I? On that phrase that you have there, that sentence that you have there highlighted, it says project costs related to the installation. Does that mean like there was a project in Nez Perce County where the hillside was sloughing off into Potlatch Creek, which is a prime fishery for the state, and it was sloughing off and taking part of the road out. I just want to make sure that if they want to put in a flood grant to replace the hillside or to shore up the hillside so it wouldn't slough off into a primary fishery, that could still be done. It's just the guardrail, the road, and the sign that would be not eligible for flood grant reimbursement. Is that correct?
That is how I read this sentence. But I could make it more explicit that only road signs and guardrails and maybe anything else we can consider to be specifically tied to the width of the road, I guess, are not eligible for reimbursement. If that is reasonable to you.
Yes. Did you change the sentence from what the materials that went out from?
I did. I'm sorry.
Okay. Yes. Okay.
It
I'm
was a
looking at
little
it on my-
unclear this morning, and I looked at it and made a quick change.
Yes. Okay. So this is fine. This version that I looked at said projects and would be not
Yeah.
allowed, and I was a little leery about that.
Okay. Well,
So I'm good with.
you're good with this?
Yes.
Okay. Well, perfect. I will leave this, and we will, I guess, now ask for the finance committee to recommend these changes to the full board.
Okay, let's see if there's any other questions first from committee members. Any other committee members have a question?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, this is Dean.
Yeah.
So just looking at these, and I think we have this kind of issue. Is there a really distinct line between, what is, for example, a highway district or a normal thing on a road, and what is flood control? I mean, it looks like, and I don't, maybe there isn't a way to put a bright line in that. What do we end up fixing highway district problems that were existing anyway, or I don't know. Is there a line in there between what was flood control and what was other stuff?
Mr. Chairman, this is Neely. I'd like to take a stab at that. Yeah, this has been something that we've kept an eye on pretty closely for a few years now. I know Board Member Barker brought this up a few years back and wanted to make sure that if there were projects that should be getting, say, Department of Transportation funding, that they weren't, say, not doing that and getting our funding instead that's intended for flood projects. I'd say that's not the case for most of these. We do a pretty good job of looking at that. These are often like Forest Service roads or county roads where there isn't Department of Transportation funding available. And there's a lot of these in sort of the north central Idaho area. I'd say in Joanne's district, but we have seen several of these in say, southern Idaho. I'm thinking of a couple out in Raft River that we had maybe in the last year or two. But I don't know if that answers your question specifically, but that's my attempt.
Yeah, that's fine, Neely. I just, you know, I think it's an issue on not on just the flood deal, but also you look at recharge and other things. You know, where's that line in there? And I don't know. And maybe we just have to look at it on case by case.
This is Jeff, and here's an example. If there's a flooding situation and it washes out a culvert in a section of the road adjacent to that culvert, and the project is to reinstall that culvert and repair that road back to where it was before the flood caused the damage, we would cover that. But if that happened to take out 100 feet of guardrail or a stop sign or whatever it might be, we wouldn't cover the paying for the stop sign or the guardrail, but we would pay for installing the new culvert and putting the road back in place. Is that your understanding?
Mr. Chairman, that is correct.
Okay, and I think that's appropriate. I think that falls within the bounds of what we were directed to do by the legislature. Committee members, any further questions? If not, other board members, do you have any questions? Okay, I think so. We're looking to recommend these criteria changes to the full board to act on at next week's board meeting. Is that correct?
Correct.
Mr. Chairman, this is Mark. I so move that we recommend these changes to the full board next week.
Okay, I have a motion. Is there a second?
This Dean, I'll second it.
Okay, any discussion on the motion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Patton.
Okay, next item is the loan program. We'll have Justin Ferguson present on that topic.
Okay. Just while you're getting ready, Justin, Joanne, are you still do you want to take the gavel, or are you okay where we're at?
The power just came on and I need to log on first. So
Okay.
if you give me 5 minutes, I can take over.
Okay, all right. Okay, Justin, let's go ahead and proceed.
Okay. Let me see. And is that big enough to read the text and everything for everybody? I can zoom in just a little farther.
A little more zoom might help this particular board member.
All right.
There
Those of
you
us
go.
on the other side of 50 would appreciate you zooming in.
Let's see. Oh, I forgot I can use the TVs. Let's see. Is that a little better? All right. Perfect. Good morning. So as part of the loan program, we've kind of been keeping an eye on the interest rate and kind of to start with a little bit of background. So the program had been at a 4.5% for a while. And then back in 2020, there was a resolution to move it to a 3.5%, kind of in line with what we were seeing at the time. And then the board made another adjustment in 2021, moving the program to the federal prime rates. And we updated it quarterly. And that kind of held us a while in the 5-ish range until a couple of years ago, where things jumped up, and lately we've been sitting at about a 7.5%. So as part of the program review, we put together a couple of different indices for your consideration to move the interest rate to track with a different index to still be updated quarterly, just to put us in a different interest rate position. And let's see, I can jump right to it. So the first one we looked at was adjusting the program to the federal funds rate. So a quick little bit of background. Right now we're at the federal prime rates, and that's the rate generally you would get you'd get a loan through your bank from. This federal funds rate is the rate that institutions use to lend to each other against without securities. And so it's actually 3% lower than the federal prime rate. And so right now they're looking at let me see, I want to say we're at about a 4%. So if you take the 7.5, you take off 3%, that'll be right where we'd be at. One of the pros is that it does provide one of the lower available interest rates of everything that we had looked at. And using an average 30-year term loan, and that's kind of what we see lately, the interest rate 30 years ago would have been right about a 5 or 5.5% depending. And another pro is that it will always be lower than the federal prime rate because that's kind of how the prime rate's calculated. A con here is that the index can dip below CD rates, and there's always the possibility that borrowers could withdraw the funds, dump them in a CD, and try and make that happen. We do have some disbursement requirements built into the program that I think would insulate us against that. When we do a disbursement, we do require proof of work done. And so I'm not positive there may be a way around, but it's not immediately apparent. There's also the possibility of the loan or of the interest rate dropping to 0. So in this stretch from about 2009 to about 2016, it's really pretty low. And that there's a higher degree of volatility. We see a lot of up and down with this compared to the other 2 indices that we'll cover next. And I can stop there. Were there any questions about this one, or I can move on to the next one? Cool. All right. The next one we looked at is the 30-year bond yield. And actually, I've got to back up really quick, something I had meant to mention. All of these graphs were pulled as of a couple of days ago. I want to say it was Monday or Tuesday, but they're all calendar year 1990 to current. So we're looking at the same data range. So the next index we looked at is the 30-year bond yield, again from 1990 to the start of this week. It's a lot steadier than the federal funds rate, and that's one of the pros here, is that it doesn't appear as impacted as big economic swings as the federal funds rate. It's overall generally lower than the federal prime rate. Comparing where we're at now, we're right at about a 4.5% on this bond yield, whereas the federal prime rate's closer to 7.5%. And the index is consistently above 0. It's projected to stabilize somewhere between 4 and 5. And something you'll see in all of these graphs, there was a pretty big dip in all of them from 2019 to 2022 during the pandemic. So if we kind of, if we trend through what that could have looked like without the pandemic, I think it kind of keeps us somewhere in that 3 to 5 range with this one. One of the cons here is that it could drop below CD market rates. And we do have those disbursement requirements that I think would prevent that from being an issue. The index is above 0, but it's generally below 6%, and that's since about 2001. Something that I did want to mention with all of these options is that we could add in additional basis points if you'd like to add some padding to that number. And that while this index does look a little more insulated than the federal funds rate, and this kind of applies to all of them, none of them are immune from significant economic fluctuations. And if we did see something happening, the board could always go back and revisit this interest rate if we found ourselves in a spot. The last one we looked at is the 30-year fixed mortgage rate, again from 1990 to the start of this week. It's really pretty similar to the bond rate, just shifted a little bit higher. It would provide a higher return on investment if the board was interested in getting as much investment return as they could out of these loans. But it would still be lower than the federal prime rate. It does track with economic conditions. It's not as static as the 30-year bond, but it's not as active as the federal funds. It kind of splits the difference here. And on average, it is higher than the market rates we found. Again, it does have that dip from 2020 or 2019 to 22, similar to the last one. But if we trended it through, we could imagine it tracking up from about a 4 to a 5 or 6. So a couple of cons here is that higher interest rate may still be prohibitive to potential applicants, and something that we've seen tracking with the federal prime rate is as the interest rate has gone up, the amount of applications we've received has gone down. And that there is a slower market reaction when economic changes occur. And the last one is that it's projected to stabilize between 6 and 7%. And I put that as a con here to say that that is higher than the 30-year bond yield, but it may actually be a pro if the board's looking to get a higher return on investment. And I can pause there or jump to the conclusion if there are any questions. I know that was kind of a lot, and I'm happy to go back.
Committee members, any questions?
Jeff, this is Joanne and I am online now if you'd
Oh,
like.
okay, I'm going to hand you the gavel and then we can proceed from there. Go right ahead.
Okay. I didn't see any committee member questions. Is there any questions from other board members? Okay, I think you've done a fantastic job. Oh, I'm sorry. Was there a question?
Oh, no, just excited there's not questions.
Okay. Continue on. Thank you, Justin.
So kind of getting to the end of this, based on what we've looked at, we would propose the board switching to the 30-year bond yield. That I think puts the program in a good spot. We would also recommend a floor of 2.5%. And then we would also recommend adding 50 additional basis points or 0.5% to that bond yield. Really, the point there is to help insulate against big swings. It kind of adds a little bit of padding if we start to see something happening, prevents a run on the house if things drop out from underneath us, but then also knowing that we could come back and revisit this if we did see something significant happen. And with that, I do have a resolution.
Okay, Madam
Oh.
Chair, while Justin's bringing that up, I've been thinking about this. If we're going to have a floor of 2.5, I wonder to keep this thing from going crazy and limiting the ability of applicants to proceed with projects because of excessive interest costs or what would be perceived to be high interest costs. If maybe we ought to, if we're going to have a floor of 2.5, maybe we should have a cap of 5.5. I don't know, or pick a number. I'm willing to think about that, but that would kind of keep us in a middle range. The bond rate would give us a guide as where to adjust between those sideboards, but it would keep us from getting excessively high rates or low rates.
Is there any other discussion from committee members on that concept before we look at the resolution?
Madam Chair, this is Dean. I agree with what Jeff said. There might be a way to do that. We look at if whatever what did we say? What would that get our rate now to about 4.5? So what if we put the same distance between our current rates for the floor and the cap? Does that seem reasonable, or do we want to go lower than that?
I think that would put us at a 7.5. So that would put us right about where we're at.
Okay.
But that would be the maximum.
Maybe we wouldn't want to go with a cap that high then.
Yeah, Madam Chairman, I just thought, 5.5, it looks like, based on the research that Justin's done, that you would rarely exceed 6% if you just left it open, but that might give some comfort to people working on projects that we would give some consideration to holding the line on what interest costs might be. So I don't know if you wanted to go up to 6 where we think the max is, and then if for some unknown reason this bond rate fluctuated aggressively higher, we'd still have some protection for applicants. I don't know. we're not a bank. We're really not in the business of uh, making money off of this than to the extent of it benefits others in the future. So if we were in a range that was reasonable, I think that would be appropriate.
This is Mark. When I started this discussion a few months ago, it was because, I felt like we were too high for what we were doing. So I certainly appreciate the attempt to lower it, and I can support a floor and a ceiling as well. I'm not saying where that is, but I think we were too high there for a while.
Okay, Mark, I didn't quite hear what you said. Do you support a 5.5% ceiling?
I didn't put a number out there. I just said I support a floor and a ceiling. So 5.5, 6. Yeah, I'm content with that.
It does sound like we have some safeguards in place to make sure that people don't take, if interest rates were to creep up to 7%, we have some safeguards in place where people couldn't take the loan out at 5.5% and reinvest it. Is that correct, Justin?
Yes, so what would happen is when we receive a disbursement, they've got to submit an invoice or proof of work done. So if you bought materials and you need them paid back, I need to see that you bought materials.
Okay. So, committee members, should we have a voice vote first on whether or not we want to add a ceiling before we look at the resolution? I would entertain a motion to add the ceiling.
Madam
Madam
Chair, this is
Go ahead,
Dean.
Dean.
I'd move that we put a ceiling on this program. So,
And do you want to state what that ceiling would be?
I don't know what the board's was that 5.5 a number acceptable to everybody?
If that's your motion, we'll soon see.
This is Jeff. I'll second that motion, and all we're doing is making a recommendation to the full board. The full board may have some other ideas that they explore when this
Right.
is presented at the board meeting.
Okay, so there's been a motion to put a ceiling in of 5.5%, and it's been seconded. Committee, this would be for this resolution to present to the full board. So, committee members, all in favor, say aye.
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 All right.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so then now let's look at the resolution and see what we might need to add to revise it.
Absolutely. I started with some background on the project and the history of adjusting the interest rate, but I can jump straight to line 18 of the now therefore be it resolved. Sorry. The program interest rate shall reflect the 30-year bond yield plus an additional 50 basis points or 0.5% on the first day of each quarter. And then at line 21, now therefore it be further resolved that the program will also have a minimum interest rate of 2.5%. And here I can adjust it for the meeting to say at a maximum of 5.5%.
Okay. Is there a motion to adopt this resolution and present it to the full board for as a recommendation to the full board?
Madam Chairman, this is Mark. I so move.
Is there a second?
This is Dean. I'll second it.
Okay, is there any other, I know we have some members that are not part of the committee. Is there any discussion from non-committee members on this before we vote? Okay, hearing none. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Aye. All opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you, Justin. And I think
Yeah.
we'll move on to the next item.
Next up for your consideration, I'm making that bigger really quick, is a loan extension for Barber Pool Hydro. They had applied for a loan and The loan was approved back in 2023. The amount was 850,670. Their interest rate was a 3.3%. Now, a little bit of background. They had applied for an extension once already, based on FERC licensing and things like that. And it sounds like after talking to their project manager, they're still kind of in a similar spot. They're working through licensing. They've just sent everything over for, and I'd have to double check with them, for the license transfer from Ada County to Barber Pool Hydro as a company. At that time, FERC will have 120 days to review the submission. The transfer can then be approved. And their best estimate of being able to start work now is October of 2026. So they had asked for an extension through December of 2027 just to get through this FERC process and start work. And I can pause there, or I've got a resolution for your consideration.
Before looking at the resolution, do any committee members have any questions for Justin on this contract?
Madam Chairman, this is Mark.
Go ahead.
Have they drawn any funds against this loan at this point, or are they still?
They have not yet.
Okay,
Oh, sorry.
thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's go ahead and look at the resolution then.
Oh, Madam Chair, this is Jeff. What interest rate are they trying to lock in for another 2 years compared to what we've just changed there? I mean, what's the differential between what they have and if we didn't do the extension, what they would get if they rolled this into a new application?
If we canceled this application right now, it's approved at a 3.3%. Based on if we switch to the bond yield at the start of next quarter, they'd be about a 4.5%.
Okay.
Wouldn't that be 5%? Because it's
Oh,
4%.
yes, it would. Sorry.
Okay, thank you.
It would be a 1.7% increase if we ask them to reapply. Did I just lose audio?
All right. Jumping to the resolution. The Barber Pool Hydro applied in September of 2022 to rehab the dam for 850,670. Jumping to line 19, the loan was approved for Barber Pool Hydro with resolution number 34-2022 with a 3.33% interest rate and a 20-year term. And then at line 23, Barber Pool Hydro was granted an extension through March of 25 to act on the contract regarding the FERC licensing procedures. And then jumping to line 34, is now therefore it be further resolved that the IWRB approves the extension of time to act on the loan contract number 1033 through December of 2027.
Okay. Committee members, I think we have a fundamental decision to make where we're recommending to the full board to change the interest rate to a different model that would lower it. Do we want to renew these or extend these contracts on the old interest rate, or do we want to have them require them to reapply after April 1st using the new measure for the interest rates? I'd love to hear.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Dale.
Dale. Right now, they want a 1-year extension on the contract that we have with them.
Yes.
So are they expecting that interest rate to go with it, I think?
Yes, they are.
I would not be opposed to that, so that's just my feeling.
Okay, thank you, Dale.
Madam Chair, this is Dean. I guess I don't know what the number is. Maybe Neely can tell me what it is. So how much money have we got out of loans that have been committed, but nothing's been drawn on them yet?
We're getting that number.
It's 30. Oh.
This
let's
is
see.
Mark. Yeah, I'd like to screen up on this resolution. Oh, now I can. No, I can't. This is for 850,000. Was that somewhere in that neighborhood? Is that correct?
That is correct.
Now this was in 2018. No, 2022 dollars. In 2027 dollars, is 850,000 still going to be enough? Or are they just trying to lock this number in because of the interest rate? So they're going to come up with the increased cost somewhere else.
Well, Mr. Gibbs, if I can answer that, if it's more than that, they'll have to apply for a new loan at the higher interest rate, at the current interest rate. Unless the scope has changed. I mean, if the scope has changed, isn't that correct?
That's exactly right. And right now it doesn't look like the scope has changed. The idea is still to do the same work on the dam. They just have to take ownership of the dam through FERC before they're allowed to start.
Okay, but let's go back to Board Member Stevenson's question. How much money is outstanding on, I think there were only 3 or 4 that have not had draws on their loans.
Yes, that's exactly right. And let's see. I've got, actually it's these, the 3 that haven't drawn, and I might have to grab a calculator quick.
Well, just
So-
rough numbers.
5, 6, about 6.5 million.
Okay,
That have not drawn on the loan just yet. And those 3 are Barber Pool Hydro that we're looking at today, another one following this for Northside Canal Company for 5 million. And then King Hill Irrigation District has an outstanding loan for $500,000. And the Raft River is we've got 2 that we're holding that don't have contracts generated. One is Raft River and one is Lost Valley. So Raft River has 14.1 million committed, but we don't have contract documents executed. I think they're still working on district formation. And then Lost Valley, we don't have funds committed, we just have an application in still.
okay. So I'm thinking that if we want to revisit having applicants submit new applications, it would be for the 2 that are not even in a contract phase. Not for these that have contracts, but have good reasons. Their scope hasn't changed, but they have good reasons for not being able to take draws.
Madam Chair, this is Dean. I think that's fine. I don't have any problem with the ones that we have in place. I just don't want to see the board get into a position where we have a lot of money committed out there and nobody drawing on it, and then we run short on making new loans. That's my concern, but it doesn't sound like we're there yet.
Madam Chair, this is Jeff. This is just one of the many complications with water projects that we've been trying to explain to the legislature and others over the past several weeks. I don't think we ought to penalize an organization because they're not getting the cooperation that they need from FERC. I don't think we'd have to go very far to find others who have equal frustrations when dealing with the federal mechanisms that we all have to face. So I think in this instance and others like this, it's appropriate to work with these applicants. They're trying to do the right thing, and we made commitments to them based on what I believe they were being told at the time, and I don't believe these delays have been caused by the applicant.
Okay, having heard from 3 people who seem to be in favor of of making a recommendation to keep this interest rate and term for this particular project. I would entertain a motion to make a recommendation to the full board to extend this contract for another year.
Madam
This
Chair,
is-
this is Dean. I'll make that motion.
This is Jeff. I'll second
Madam
it.
Chair, I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 Motion passes. Okay, Justin, let's move to the next one.
And I've got one more. And let's see, make that a little bit bigger. Okay. The other extension is for the Northside Canal Company. So the loan was approved back in November of 2022 for $5 million. They're looking at a 4.38% interest rate. In talking to Alan, they had received an extension before to take a shot at a WaterSmart grant to try and offset some of the project costs so that they didn't have to send them out to all of their shareholders. They put the project out to bid. And after talking to Alan, they received no bids. It sounded like there was just not enough workforce out there to get the project done. They're working through an engineering consultant to try and find a better window to put the project back out to bid. But with that, they're also looking at an extension. So he's hoping to get started in 2025 or as soon as feasible, but they're still kind of waiting to see what that window looks like. And Alan's provided a letter that I can include in the board materials, but they're looking at an extension through 2027 as well, just in case they put the project back out to bid and they kind of end up in the same boat.
Okay, thank you, Justin. This is another situation where the applicant is the circumstances are outside the control of the applicant.
Yep.
So let's go ahead and review the resolution.
Perfect. Right. And similar to Barber Pool Hydro, there we go. The project costs provided were about 7.3 million. And they've applied for a loan for 5 million. In 2023, the board approved the loan not to exceed 5 million from the water management account at 4.38% with a 20-year repayment term. They were granted an extension in December of 2025, and that was prior to putting the project out to bid. Let's see, and I'll jump to line 37. Sorry about that. Line 40. Now therefore be further resolved that this resolution and the approval are subject to the following conditions. And I have just found a problem with my resolution that I'll need to fix. It's not the same as what was provided in your materials. There's a line, now therefore it be resolved that the loan extension is approved through December of 2027. And I can grab a copy.
That would be the first, now therefore be it resolved. Right? Okay, because this is now therefore be it further resolved.
Yeah, and it looks like I must have grabbed a draft to present to you. I have a cleaned up version with the correct now therefores. Let me grab that really quick. And we'd actually caught it this afternoon or yesterday afternoon. And it made it to the materials, but didn't quite make it in my presentation. All right.
I think we can go forward without the resolution, knowing that it's a 1-year extension, correct?
Yes, similar to Barber Pool Hydro, and I just grabbed it, sorry about the holdup.
Okay.
It starts at line 40. Now therefore it be further resolved that the IWRB approves the extension of time to act on contract 1033 through December of 2027.
Okay, so we're looking for a recommendation to the full board to extend this contract for 1 year.
Madam Chairman,
Yes, go ahead, Jeff.
This is Mark. I would make a motion to extend the contract for a year.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Is there a second?
I'll second, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you, Dale. Okay, before we vote in this, I do think that we need to change that first. Now, therefore, be it further resolved to strike out further. Yeah. Yep. Okay. So with that small modification, do we need to, Mr. Patton, can we go ahead and vote on this?
Yes.
Okay. So all in favor of moving this forward to the full board, say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you,
Thank you.
Justin. We're quite busy this month.
No, thanks for the patience on that resolution.
Okay, Mr. Patton, you want to address that?
Yes, next item is regional water sustainability projects and budgeting process. With the governor's proposal of $30 million in ongoing funds to the water management account for water projects across the state, and it appears the Joint Finance Appropriation Committee approved that right before this meeting started. Staff believes that we need to revisit the regional water sustainability priority list process and the budgeting process. The board's budgeting process for the secondary fund is pretty routine at this point. However, we will need to formalize that budgeting process for the water management account. And we'll need to figure out how the regional water sustainability priority process links up with that budgeting process for the water management account. So with that introduction, I'm going to turn it over to Cynthia to walk through a memo that she's provided.
Yeah, good morning, Madam Chair and committee members, board members. Yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and build off of Brian's comments. And this is not intended to be an action item topic. This is more just to initiate the discussion about the budget setting process for FY 2026. And we'd also like to highlight a few areas where program updates or administrative type updates may be something that the committee and the board wants to consider. As Brian mentioned, we may have more to think about going forward depending on the department's budget, but moving forward with the traditional budget setting approach, again, we'd like to spend some time with the committee this year, knowing that there is a fair amount to review. So to start with, I know everyone is familiar with the board's counts at this point, but it's worth just recognizing that the board has 3 active accounts and some additional funding that's been allocated. The revolving development account is one of those which provides funds for specific programs and projects. It also, as we've just discussed, has traditionally been the source of funding for loans for water project development projects. The board also has the secondary aquifer planning, management, and implementation fund, which is more commonly referred to as the secondary fund. And generally, the funds from that account support have in the past supported the ESPA recharge program, cloud seeding program, and various other statewide projects, including statewide modeling and hydrologic studies. The board also has the water management account, which is the primary source of funds for regional water sustainability priority projects. It is also the source of funds for grant programs and loans, as we just discussed. Another source of funding, of course, is the American Rescue Act funds, or ARPA. The board was allocated $250 million from the state's ARPA funding back in 2022, and the board has committed those funds and entered into contracts for projects that were determined to qualify for the federal guidelines. So, building off of the pool of funds, as Brian mentioned, there are a number of programs and projects that the board supports that really draw from all of those funds in various ways. And we know that the regional priority projects actually draw from funds from all of those different funding sources, the RDA, the secondary account, the water management account, and ARPA funds. Aquifer management projects and programs draw from the secondary fund, water management account, and ARPA funds. The board's grant programs generally draw from the water management account, loan programs from the revolving development account and the water management account. And then you have a number of other projects that are funded through the revolving development account that again, either have their own appropriations or again, have been built into that account over the time. And some examples of those that I have listed here, which we don't talk about frequently, but are important projects, are the board's Dvorak hydro plant and Priest Lake Outlet Dam received funds initially from the RDA, water transactions program. Programs like that are captured in the RDA. So I think one of the takeaways from this slide was intended to be that to illustrate that of the board's programs, and again, as Brian highlighted, there needs to be sort of an appreciation for the fact that there are funds being drawn from different pots of money, and that is something the board will want to keep in mind as it tries to prioritize, funding and projects. That they'll want to consider all of those funding pools at the same time to ensure that there's some alignment with those priorities. So, what we've identified, I think, as staff going into the budget cycle here for FY 2026 are a few different considerations for the board. One, of course, is that the board traditionally passes its secondary fund budget and a spending plan for the water management account prior to the beginning of the fiscal year. So that's typically at the board's May meeting. And so that, I think going forward, we just want to let the committee know that we'll need to work with you in preparation for that budget process. We would anticipate a number of meetings and coordination with the board on this topic. We would also like to take some time this year to review the revolving development account more closely with the committee. We've identified that there may be some projects that are ready for closeout, and there may be an opportunity to reallocate some of those funds, and would like to work with the committee to review that and those options. And as I just mentioned, then I think the other focus will be on reviewing all of the board's accounts in parallel to ensure that as the board is making decisions and developing funding priorities, that they are in alignment between all of the different funding pools. So jumping to what I guess I would consider a second topic is would be what we're calling process updates. And these are really, I guess, administrative in nature, but updates to some of the projects and the programs that the board is managing. And one of the, I think, better known programs right now is the board's oversight of regional water sustainability projects. And as you all know, the board is maintaining a list of projects that are intended to help achieve water sustainability on a regional basis, regional and statewide scale. And quite a bit of funding has been committed and allocated through to some of these projects that are identified as priority projects for the state. Again, the board maintains a list and has a set of criteria for receiving proposed projects from the public and from water users, for reviewing those projects and for allocating funding or supporting development of those projects in different ways. Given the interest in working with the board and the identification of such a wide range of projects, we see that this is an opportunity for the board to circle back and review the criteria that it currently has established for those regional sustainability projects, and to identify whether there are changes that are needed or if the board would like to reprioritize those activities in any way. And again, recognizing that many of these projects receive funding from the different funding and accounts that the board maintains. So as I stated, I think we would like to spend some time with the board reviewing in the committee, reviewing updates to that priority projects process and the list itself. That would include review of criteria for applying, project evaluation and approval of those projects. We'd like to ensure that we don't need that or look into opportunities to clarify the project eligibility. And then again, to refine that project list to allow for more real time and to accommodate any necessary reporting activities going forward. Of course, there was some attention spent on this list over this legislative session, and we see that there's a good opportunity to report additional information about the status of those projects and the funding commitments that the board has made in conjunction with those projects. I've also identified that there are other board-funded projects that are not necessarily maintained on or defined as a regional sustainability project that the board may also want to report and evaluate those funding priorities. So we'd like to review those with you as well going forward. Other process updates really, I think, pertain to the grant programs. As you know, the board is now operating an aging infrastructure grant program, flood management grant program, groundwater to surface water conversion project program, and the board has already identified a couple of new grant programs that have not been implemented to date. Those include delivery, system efficiency, and capacity improvement grants, and monitoring and measurement grants. Those are captured, and there is some funding that has been committed through the water management account. We'd like to revisit that with the board members. And we'll take the opportunity at a future meeting to review the status of all of those programs. And you've already talked about the criteria associated with flood management grants today. I know staff have some recommendations for the aging infrastructure grant program as well. But we'd like to, I think, work with the board to review, again, the status of all of the grants, the application cycles that are in place that were generally set to try to align with water user needs as well as our administrative resources. But knowing that there may be a need to roll out additional cycles of the different grants, such as the groundwater surface water conversion projects, or to implement new grant programs. We want to make sure that there's an awareness of what the existing cycles look like and how the program is being managed to date. So with that, Madam Chair and committee, I guess this was really just an effort to bring to your attention that over the next couple of months, we'd like to prioritize these budget setting activities. We want, the board will need to be prepared to approve a secondary fund budget and water management account spending plan at the May board meeting. Again, we'd like to take the opportunity to review any opportunities to reallocate funds in the RDA, review the eligibility processes and administrative processes associated with the Regional Water Sustainability Priority Projects list, and then determine what the annual grant administration priorities are from the board standpoint. So that's what I have for you today. Do you all have any questions, comments, or any guidance for us moving forward, Madam Chair?
I don't off the top of my head. Committee members, does anyone have anything they want to add to this discussion?
Madam Chair, this is Dean. I think this is a really good idea as we go forward through this. I think we're on the right path.
I would agree.
Madam Chair, this is Jeff. I concur with Dean. I think this is a well thought out plan that we need to move forward with.
Yes, okay.
All
All right.
Great. Well, thank you
Yeah.
for that commitment, Madam Chair, committee members. I'm sure Jennifer will be in touch to schedule a number of meetings with you all going forward.
Yes, I anticipate that the work of the Finance Committee is not dying down. All right, well, thank you. With that, I think we're on to the next agenda item.
Just other items, Madam Chair.
Does anyone have any other items to bring before the Finance Committee?
Madam Chairman,
Yes. Go ahead.
just a question for Brian, and I guess probably Jeff. You see any problem with our budget going forward in the House and Senate?
The department budget was approved by JFAC just before this meeting started. It included everything that the governor recommended, with the exception of a public information officer for the department. As to where it goes, I mean, as you know, it does have to pass, both floors. I haven't heard that could be a problem, but I'm probably, not the best position to know.
Madam Chair, Mark, this is Jeff. It did go out of JFAC with a due pass recommendation. So I cautiously optimistic that the legislature will view the importance of the work that the department and the water board does favorably and pass the appropriation.
Okay. This is a question. This is Joanne. I have a question for Jeff, maybe. Do you know the path? What happens after it goes out of JFAC? Does it go to both houses at the same time, and does it have a bill number separate from what we had before?
As far as I know,
It has a
Joanne,
bill number.
it'll have a bill number, and it will be assigned to be carried by it will be assigned to be carried by a House member and a Senate member, and they kind of push some of the appropriation bills to the House first and some to the Senate first. I didn't hear anything in the commentary this morning that could give me an understanding of whether it will go to the House or the Senate first.
Okay.
It's kind of a 50-50 split. It's not really any real scientific process about where it goes. It's kind of intended to split the load up kind of equally between the two bodies, who gets the bill first. So I don't know if there's an advantage to starting it in one place versus the other. At least back when I was involved, I didn't think that was particularly an issue, which house it started in.
Okay. Yes.
If
Thank
it's a revenue bill, it generates revenue, they all have to start in the House. But these budgets could go either place first.
Okay. Appreciate that insight. I'd like to kind of keep my eye on it too. All right. Well, is there anything more to come before the finance committee?
Just that we'll see you all here in Boise next week.
Okay, so I didn't have entertain a motion to adjourn.
Madam Chairman, I move we adjourn.
Dell, was there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Dell. All in favor, say aye.
Hi.
Aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned.
Thank you.
Tolerating my inconsistent internet.